Las Vegas is not just another race, it's probably the most important night of the entire season, but also the coldest and most unpredictable, which could define the World Championship. Despite being by far the circuit that has received the most mockery and criticism in recent years, so far it hasn't disappointed. On the contrary, it has delivered spectacular races. And that's the scenario we expect for this weekend because while the cameras focus on the lights, the casinos, and the show, the reality is that this circuit is a trap disguised as a spectacle. There's no grip, the temperatures are minimal, the straights are endless, and if you make a mistake, it can ruin your entire weekend. And what makes this edition so special is that the championship could be decided here. Max Verstappen comes here needing to score and not make a single mistake, because a bad result would leave him mathematically out. Lando Norris arrives just like after Brazil, but this happens to be the worst possible circuit for McLaren, and Oscar Piastri has one of his last real chances to stay in the fight after the blow that was Interlagos. This video analyzes the championship battle and possible World Championship outcome. The possible surprise team? The surprise of the weekend. The downfall of another. And everything you need to know about this Las Vegas Grand Prix. And stay until the end because I'll tell you my predictions for who will finish in the top 5 spots for Sunday's race. So let's start from the beginning. Brazil left Max in a critical situation. After this race, there will only be 58 points left in play, 33 in Qatar, and 25 in Abu Dhabi. So if Norris gets 9 points ahead, Verstappen will be mathematically eliminated from the championship. The results that leave him out are as follows.
Norris primero, Verstappen tercero peor. Norris segundo, Verstappen sexto peor. Norris tercero,
Verstappen worse. Norris 4th, Verstappen 9th or worse. And Norris 5th and Verstappen 10th or worse. Also, if this last scenario happened and Max won everything remaining and Norris didn't score any more points, the Brit would be crowned champion. Because even though they would have the same number of victories with 7, Lando has accumulated more podiums throughout the season. And if this happens, he will become the first McLaren champion since Lewis Hamilton in 2018 and the first double win in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships since 1998 when Mika Hakkinen achieved it. But something interesting will happen this weekend, because the same circuit that could cost Max the championship is also where he's the favorite. Las Vegas has a low downforce layout, which, on paper, is more similar to circuits like Monza and Baku. Both are circuits where Verstappen won comfortably. So much so that several simulations indicate that Red Bull will have the fastest car of the weekend. In addition, Max arrives with a new engine that was installed for him in Brazil, which gives him an extra power advantage on a circuit where power is really important given the long straights. And additionally, after saving the disaster in qualifying at Interlagos, the Austrian team is expected to have learned and improved for this Grand Prix. Finally, there's a key detail. In 2024, Red Bull made a mistake with the wing. The setup was wrong. The car wasn't competitive. And even so, Max finished ahead of both McLarens and was crowned champion on this very circuit. With all that said, Verstappen is putting everything on the line in this race. It's his last chance to stay in the fight for the title. The positive thing for him is not only that he's the favorite, but also that McLaren, the most solid team on most circuits, is going at his pace. Lando comes in with a comfortable lead after Brazil. He's leading the championship and is handling the pressure much better than last year. In theory, he should be the calmest man this weekend, considering the situations of his main rivals. But the reality is that this circuit is the worst possible for McLaren. In 2013, Norris retired and Piastri finished 10th. In 2024, Norris was 6th and Piastri was 7th. In addition, McLaren's biggest advantage over its rivals is how their tires perform when track temperatures are high. However, that won't be the case. On the contrary, everything indicates that by far this will be the coldest Grand Prix of the entire season. So the British team will lose its big advantage. And, okay, McLaren won't have its best weekend, but realistically, Lando doesn't need it. He has a 24-point lead over Oscar Piastri, so he can race calmly without taking risks in critical situations like qualifying and the start. Because even if the car doesn't work well, the situation is the same for both him and Piastri. And as long as he finishes ahead of his teammate, or even behind but not too far with so few races left, minimizing damage might be enough for him to become champion. Like I said, he doesn't need to take extra risks, because the worst thing that could happen to him would be to repeat his 2023 crash and leave the door open for a massive points cut by Verstappen and Piastri. And while Max would definitely take advantage of a situation like that, with Oscar it's not so clear, so let's talk about that. Piastri comes in shaken. Brazil left him in a bad place mentally, and this circuit is exactly what suits him the least. Low grip, low temperatures, and a style very similar to Baku, where he had his worst weekend of the season and of his career. In fact, Oscar's decline has been brutal in the last few races. And not just in Brazil, but I already talked a lot about that in my last video where I discussed everything that happened in Interlagos. And in my newsletter, so I'll continue. As I mentioned, McLaren won't have a dominant car. And with low expectations and the poor form of the Australian, the situation doesn't look good for him. He needs a great result to stay alive in the fight for the title. But the conditions are set for exactly the opposite to happen. In this race, he won't just worry about Lando and Max. He'll also need to watch out for a team capable of delivering the weekend's biggest surprise. Thank you. In Las Vegas, the big threat to Max Verstappen isn't Ferrari or McLaren. It's Mercedes, because if there's one thing that has hurt the German team throughout the season, it's their tire overheating. But on the American circuit, the low temperature will make them one of the favorites to aim for the top of the podium. Since, as I said before, this race will be the coldest of the season. Russell has already won in Canada and Singapore. So, this will be his chance to maintain his great improvement, performance, and finish with a third victory. Also, last year, Mercedes was surprisingly fast. Lewis made an incredible comeback while Russell dominated the whole weekend. In fact, it was the team's best weekend in 2024. But now Russell is not the only Mercedes driver looking for the win. Kimi Antonelli is coming off his best weekend in Formula One, and as I said in my previous video, he is finally proving that Toto Wolff was not wrong in choosing him. Mercedes is shaping up to be the second best car for this Grand Prix, and everything is set for them to repeat a result similar to Interlagos. However, while they are looking to keep adding points and secure second place in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari continues to fall apart. The team went to Brazil as a solid contender for the runner-up spot. But in just one weekend, they dropped from second to fourth place. And with the way Red Bull and Mercedes are performing, everything indicates that they won't get it back. And the only hope for Ferrari, for now, is Leclerc. Charles arrives in spectacular form. Third in the United States, second in Mexico, and a brilliant qualifying in Brazil before his did not finish. Also in Las Vegas, he was always competitive. He finished second in 2023, taking the position from Checo Perez on the last lap with an incredible overtake. And in 2024, he finished fourth despite Ferrari's strategy that hurt him. If the team doesn't mess it up and he gets a good qualifying, Leclerc could achieve a great result. But the team, as a whole, is in free fall. Not only did the double retirement in Brazil ruin their Constructors' Championship, but the internal struggles continue to destroy the team from within. So much so that the rumors about Oliverman possibly replacing Lewis Hamilton for 2027 are getting stronger and stronger. But I'll talk about that in a moment. The battle in the midfield is going to be incredible because there's a lot of money at stake between 6th and 9th place in the Constructors' Championship, with only 20 points between them. Williams is coming in very well positioned. As I mentioned, Las Vegas is similar in characteristics to Monza and Baku, and it was precisely on those circuits where Williams had their best results. Sainz's podium in Azerbaijan and Albon's 7th place in Italy. If everything lines up for them this Sunday, they could secure 5th place in the Constructors' Championship once and for all, which would be considered a truly successful season. But now comes the interesting part, the 4 teams fighting for the millions. Just look at how close the standings are. Haas is on the rise after the update in Circuit of the Americas, and with Oliverman on a steady climb. The performance of the young Brit has been so impressive that there are strong rumors he could replace Hamilton at Ferrari for 2027. In my opinion, Haas, with Ollie leading the way, will be one of the strongest in this group, and considering they're only 2 points behind Aston Martin, this could be a great weekend for the American team. On the Racing Bulls side, surprisingly, it's Liam Blossom who is impressing the team, as he consistently outperforms Isaac Hedyard, who is having a season that's going from good to bad. And although in Brazil I consider a remarkable 7th and 8th place, which allowed them to stay ahead of this group, we'll see if they can string together another result like that. About Aston Martin, there's not much to say. They depend completely on Fernando Alonso because their car is bad and the other driver is Lance Stroll. And if they're not careful, they could go from being tied in 6th place to being overtaken by Haas and Sauber in just 2 races, which would be a disaster. Finally, Sauber is a complete mystery. Sometimes they work, sometimes not. Sometimes Hülkenberg does well, sometimes Bortoleto. Even though they've scored points recently, you never know what to expect. And Alpine? Well, even though Gasly pulled off a miracle by scoring points both in the sprint and the main race in Brazil, the French still have the worst car, and unless another miracle happens, Franco Colapinto will still be without his first points of the year. Now, I've talked a lot about the midfield, so let's go with my predictions for who will finish in the top 5 places for this 2025 Las Vegas Grand Prix. But before that, if you're enjoying this video, subscribe. In 5th place, Lando Norris. As I said, I think he's going to race without taking risks because of the situation he's in, both because of the comfortable lead he has in the championship in terms of points, and because of the low performance expected from McLaren during the weekend. He can definitely surprise and finish higher, but I don't think he'll be fighting for the podium. In 4th place, Charles Leclerc. He's coming in great form. He has performed very well in Las Vegas for 2 years in a row, and Ferrari might have enough pace to finish ahead of McLaren, as long as they don't do something stupid. And if Charles manages to put his car ahead in qualifying, I think he has a good chance of staying in front and even fighting for the 3rd step on the podium. However, for now, I leave him in 4th place. In 3rd place, Kimi Antonelli. As I mentioned, Kimi is coming in with spectacular form. Mercedes has its best chance thanks to the low temperatures, and this type of circuit rewards drivers who brake late and aggressively. So everything fits perfectly for the Italian. Part of me wants to believe that victory is possible, and I was about to make that my prediction, but the reality is that I think the last step of the podium is something more realistic. In 2nd place, George Russell. I think he could easily be in 1st place. The logic behind it is similar to Kimi's regarding how Mercedes works, but considering George's performance throughout the season, I think he'll be ahead of his teammate. And again, he could finish 2nd, or he could repeat the 2024 feat and take the victory. So we'll see. Finally, in 1st place, Max Verstappen. At the beginning of the video, I went into detail about why I think Max is the favorite for this weekend. But I also think that George could make things pretty difficult for him. Let's hope so. We want to see an entertaining race. And hey, if you want to enjoy this weekend in the best way possible, don't miss the daily analyses and all the information I'll be sending out these days in my newsletter. Sign up at F1 Al Cubo or use the link in the description or pinned comment. See you next time.